In the first presentation, we'll talk about brand communication, if I get there. All right. We have 3 speakers, and I'd go straight to the point. I'd invite Rouven over here from Acquia to tell us about digital platforms and why they matter. Welcome, Rouven.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Glad to see so many faces here. So, talking about digital brand communications, it's a huge topic, and there are many clients reaching out to us, asking, what can we do? How can we change the situation in which we are? So, to understand, or to get a better understanding of the situation, I'd like to give you a quick overview of the things we see on the market. I'd like to share those insights with you. So we'll talk about typical situations we face and how we solve them and how we address this. So this first part of the session is basically the foundation we lay out. And after that, I will hand over to Trio again, and they will tell us what they are able to achieve with this platform. So my name is Rouven Volk. I'm working as a solutions architect for more than 2.5 years now for Acquia in this region. I have a strong developer background coming from with Drupal and different kind of technologies. And this year, I will have my 10 years anniversary with Drupal. So who's Acquia? Most of you might heard about our company. We have roughly more than 4,000 customers, a huge partner network which spreads across the globe. And we are roughly about 750 employees. And what we do with our company is we go out to the world and try to build bigger solutions surrounding Drupal. So what does it mean talking about solutions with Drupal? It comes all down to platform. And why platforms matter is one important insight we got over the years. And here's a study from Crisp Research, which they did last year, focusing on DAX companies here, specific for our region. And they figured out it's really important to improve the way how we utilize development processes, how we utilize technology, and especially how we could automate processes. And for good automation, we definitely need transparency. And open source is one of the very good ways to achieve that. So instead of focusing into manpower and scaling with more human resources, we think about what can we automate and simplify the task so that the management of technology becomes easier. This transition has been also shown in some reports like Gartner, as we can see here. So we made a strong move from 2013 to 2016, so there is demand on the market. And why there's demand, I like to tell you about, because when we think about technology, how it works today, we can recognize that technology is moving faster and faster. Yeah? We have innovations continuously growing. And someone stated last year, technology will never change that slow as it changes today, which means the speed is increasing, and we have to adapt. Because when we're not able to adapt to this change, this will be a huge challenge for all of our companies, for the projects we run. So I like to bring up a reference to Elon Musk. He's the CEO and founder of Tesla, as I assume most of you know. And when people ask him, what made your company so successful? Just keep in mind, he's running the most successful electric car company in the world. He said one simple thing. He calls it first principle thinking. So what is this first principle thinking about? He said he takes the things we assume we know, and we boil them down to the essentials. And then we question those essentials if they are still true. So when we do this and reflect this into the world we live in here, in this worldwide internet, then we can start with a basic idea. So let's assume we have a company. And I like to represent a company with this wires circle here. Because in the companies, this is where all the data, all the processes, and everything comes together. And companies usually work quite good. Otherwise, they wouldn't invite us to talk about digital platforms, right? So there are challenges for those companies, especially when it comes to digital communication. So they have customers on one side and content on the other side. And they want to bring those together. And this is something which fits to nearly every company. So this is very generic. So let's really keep it simple and boil it down to the essentials. The way how we bring content to customers, well, I would assume you know this already. People run campaigns. So they produce content on one side, and they tell their customers about that. And when they do a good job, customers likely spend money, which leads to the completion of the cycle, the company is successful, and produce more good content to talk about the good things they are doing. But content is complex today. And when we think about content and think about the web, it needs to be responsive. We need to address multiple countries, localization, different languages. So we need tools to fit into that. And so the requirements for the web applications are continuously increasing to keep pace with the change of the digital market. So this leads to a situation where we need good editing tools. Campaigns are getting social, so there's not the face-to-face relationship anymore. People communicate with the company across different channels. As well, when companies think about spending their money somewhere, and they're not sure if they want to give us the money, we should make sure that they get support from the first minute, even before they are customers. And finally, when we're doing this job good, this will lead to innovation, and we can improve the things we do as a company. Hopefully, this fits to most of the people we speak with. This is a common pattern I can see many times. But what does it mean? The way how companies try to solve that is they say, well, I need an application with those requirements. So they run those RFPs, RFIs, whatsoever. They invite you, say, this application needs to do everything. I want to speak with my user. It needs to be mobile and so on. The question here is the all-in-one solution the best thing we could do? And I like to question that. Because what does it mean when we think about the company? It will lead to a situation where we can realize that scaling becomes really difficult because everything is locked into this application, aka technology. Innovations are getting more and more complex. And content and users are locked into this application. And please raise your hands if you have experienced a situation like that, where a customer says, oh, I have my CRM system, and there is the web application, and those are totally different things. They have to sync them. So please raise your hands. Have you seen that? Some of you. It's good. So when we think about the integration of those applications, it's becoming harder and harder because there are so many different technologies. So it's really hard to connect, isn't it? So the question is, isn't there a better way? And when you think about the way of innovation in a company, we can also recognize another pattern. So most companies start with a very simple project like, hey, here we are, we have a new startup, whatsoever. And then over time, they figure out, well, the solution I created in the first place isn't capable of doing all the things I need to do to be more successful. So they think about, let's get something bigger. And what they do is basically migration from one system to another. And what do they migrate? Migration always contains the content and the users. So when we think about that pattern and think about the next few years of this company, there will be demand for the next bigger solution because we need to be more innovative to keep pace with the market and the customers. So those migrations become more complex, more expensive, and it takes longer to bring the content and the users to the next system. To a situation where we finally need this big enterprise solution, which still is an all-in-one, the challenge with that is those relaunches really take a long time. They're very expensive, a big risk. And you might have seen this before. We call it a big bang relaunch. So those regular relaunches cause ever-increasing cost and complexity. Question is, isn't there a better way? Yes, there is. So when we think about the basic situation, we start with an application, and we are aware of the fact that content and users are logged into this application, like a data silo. Then we should maybe think about a consistency layer where we can store content and users independent from the web CMS. What would it mean for us as a business? When we need the big solution with more innovations, we could embed those in some kind of a service model, and we could grow for very low cost because we just connect the existing data. We don't need to move them. And the things we change in this upper area where innovations happens are usually the technology changes, where we address different devices or integrate the latest JavaScript technologies, doing fancy stuff or create mobile apps. So when it comes to the real big relaunch thing, it becomes really, really easy. You can do this whenever you like. Actually, this model would also allow you to reuse your content across multiple digital touchpoints. So you're not limited to a CMS anymore. You could create projects on the scale you need. Maybe you have a pilot project with a test group of customers. Maybe you need this big enterprise e-commerce store. No matter where you go, this model would allow you to reuse those things across all digital touchpoints. And this means you could test so many different challenges or channels. Yeah? So we could do e-commerce, mobile, maybe TV or Internet of Things, whatever may come up in the future. So the things we see here on the slide, I assume most of you are aware of that because we see this regularly in every project, is an area where we have innovations and consistency. And there's a 1-to-N relationship, which means, in terms of digital touchpoints, we don't know how many websites or whatsoever we will have in the future. But there will be only and always a 1-to-1 relationship with the content I produce. I want to reuse it everywhere, but I produce it centrally. And the customers I have, because the customer just sees my company, and they don't like to be identified with a website, don't they? So when you think about this, we can see two models which leads to, or which help us to solve the situation. We need carefree infrastructure. We need to automate processes. And this is where the term platform as a service comes in very useful, because the PaaS layer will allow us to address different technologies, automate processes, while on the other side, we could have a SaaS layer where we don't need to maintain it and which could scale with our company. When our user base is growing, those SaaS projects grow, and we don't need to think about migration or operations. So PaaS helps us definitely to reduce the total cost of ownership and lowers a lot of complexity by automation and stuff like that. We standardize on one technology, and so we can reuse components. In the SaaS area, SaaS models could really help us to mitigate those migration risks, to keep the efforts low, allow us to grow our customer and content base with our company, and most important, we reduce redundancies. We avoid data silos. So taking this into account, we might have seen this model before because there are already services we standardly embed in any application. Clients ask for that. I want my SSO embedded in my website. You heard about that, right? Also, things like a digital asset management or a PIM system. So with every bigger project, clients ask for, could you integrate that? I want to use it. And yes, of course, we find solutions, especially when we build websites with Drupal. We integrate stuff. So we are used to this consistency model and have centralized services. And this is something we should think about. How will the service look like in the future for users and content to benefit from this architecture? So when we think about the transition to a future-proof approach, we can remember the traditional way, like the increasing cost with migrations. And coming back to this question, when we create a consistency layer, this would allow us on a platform and a services model to switch to this model. And the migration we do is not going to the next bigger CMS system, it's going into the service model. And this would allow us to scale across all projects. So let's take a step back. The things I said are just thoughts we have about like first principle thinkings. What does it mean for our business? When it comes to the impact of open source, the trend is clear. There are so many studies out there which already prove that open source is important. This is a reference to a case study run by Northbridge in America, the future of open source, and 90% of their participants replied, yes, open source is important for efficiency, interoperability, and innovation. Which means, in other words, open source allows them to automate their business model and translate it into the web. So what does it mean in our Drupal context? And most of you here are focused on Drupal projects today, right? Drupal is similar like the space station. What does it mean? Well, we have a huge project here. People trust their lives on their technology, the success of their business. And this thing is built with standards and best practices, yeah, to allow a safe and stable environment with contributions all across the world. So let's talk about how we as Acquia usually help our customers to build those digital business platforms. And here's a pattern you might have already recognized. We say, well, there's a cloud platform. You could put your projects on it, yeah, and most of them think about hosting. What our focus is really a managed platform with application support. So no matter what you create in your Drupal application, your custom code, your integrations, like the integration with a company, this is something we like to give support as well and make sure that this is stable, reliable, and scalable. So the cloud platform is a place where you work with the content, and we have seen those icons before. Yeah? So this is how you reach your customers. However, as long as the customers are isolated in the CMS itself, and the CMS we utilize is, of course, Drupal, we still have a challenge. We have optimized our platform to run multiple sites. So customers, we usually don't have only one site. They have, I think the official number in average is 269 sites with those larger enterprise accounts. So that's huge. So we need to think about the separation here. What does it mean for the business? And so we created a service model for users and content, which we call Acquia Lift and Content Hub, which are both software as a service offerings, which allow to store those information independent from the CMS. We could embed it with standard modules. And this would allow us to scale horizontally in the digital touchpoints while having central user and content storage and profile in the service model. So those products scale with the company, and this is why they are on the company side, because here we have this one-to-one relationship. There's only one customer to the company, no matter through which digital touchpoint he comes to them. Since those projects are developed API first, you could connect them with any system you have in your company, and so this will become an important data exchange point in the architecture of your future-proof business application platform. But it's not limited to that. You could utilize those services with whatever technology you like. There's no need to actually put those websites on our platform. So you have the complete freedom to integrate them wherever you like. So the data is yours. That's important. And on the other side, you could utilize the platform as well. Start slow, start with small projects before you go into this big multi-site scenario. While you focus on Drupal, while we take care of all the maintenance and management stuff required for this platform. But then when we think about hundreds of sites, thousands of sites, we also have solutions like a site factory, which allows you to take a Drupal distribution and have a platform which allows you to spin up as many sites as you like. And this brings you into a situation where you have one central team, one central code base, central maintenance, yeah, instead of replicating web server stacks hundreds of times, which really complicates the maintenance and workload for your team. So we can assume we can easily create as many sites as we like. So what does it mean in the summary? And then I'd like to hand over to Theo. For the company, it's important to speak with the customers. And this brings us back to the brand communication. Because the customer doesn't care on which platform your company runs. They don't speak with the platform, they speak with you as a company, right? So it's really important to put this in the focus, the end customer communication, what you as a company want to achieve. And the way how our platform supports you is enabling you to have one technology stack to address all those different scenarios you might see with your customers, no matter where they are, the situation, the date, the location, or, for example, which channel they use, what is their behavior on your web property. So that said, we put you in a situation where a platform can give you a digital fingerprint of the customer. And then you as a company, your marketing teams could decide what you want to do with that. This is why platforms are important. But who of you likes to be reduced to its digital fingerprint? I assume none of you, and so I'm really happy to hand over to Jürgen at this point. And, yep. So please enjoy the track about what does it mean to have brand communication and how to use it.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Jürgen Kütemeyer. I'm the management director of Trio Group and the CEO. And a couple of years ago, we are thinking about a brand model because we are convinced that people are more than a digital fingerprint. They are more than a target group like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. We think it's very important to know his arguments and how he decided if he buy a product. And we find out that there are not only rational arguments. A lot of decisions are made by emotions. And so we have to bring together two things, rational argumentation and emotions. We call this, we have to create the heartbeat in the head. For that, we created a brand management tool. We call this brand management tool Brand Sync, because we have to synchronize the brand with the emotions of the target groups. For that, I have a very small film to explain it a little bit.
Love at first sight. It happens suddenly, without thinking, and on a completely subconscious level. Instantly, you feel like you're on the same wavelength. In other words, the message conveyed has reached the appropriate recipient. The same is true for brands. Brands convey messages that fit precisely to the carefully selected target group to make their hearts beat faster, with the result that specifically these people decide to buy the item. Everyone else can be ignored by the brand. That's how it works in B2C. But in B2B, such target group segmentation is challenging because the target groups are made up of many different people with various functions and ways of thinking. How then can a brand appeal to all of these different people on an emotional level? To understand this, let's take a look at where brand emotions originate: the brain. We're only partially aware of the brand messages we absorb. Most of this takes place subconsciously. One key player in this process is the limbic system, which codes this information as positive or negative before it's stored. Only thereafter do we have an emotional brand experience. Can this process be controlled? Yes. Neuroscience and cognitive science provide the codes. They indicate which stimuli our reward system responds to and what we would prefer to avoid, as well as how emotions and images also have a major influence on our brand purchasing behavior without us being aware of it. Brand Sync identifies the emotions and images relevant to purchasing in your target group and thus provides the codes for your brand to effectively target the individual reward center. In this way, we facilitate an emotional brand approach tailored to your customers' reward systems. Whether online, in print, or in a personal sales pitch, with Brand Sync, we create a consistent brand awareness across all brand touchpoints. We call this process the synchronization of brand, people, and media.
Now I want to explain a little bit more how it works and where it comes from. I think everyone knows this guy, Daniel Kahneman. Psychologist, it's the only one who got a Nobel Prize for economics because his findings about how people are thinking. He wrote it down in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a real great book to read. And then you understand how people decide. And one of his findings was that we decide 80% of all our decisions with our autopilot. and not with our pilot, not explicit, not conscious. We are not thinking about everything. I will show you now a very small example. What happens in your brain? We saw before the limbic system is working there deep in your brain, and what happens there is if you see a logo, in seconds you say good or not good. You are not thinking about it. You have not said, okay, what is good with Microsoft, or is Apple better than? No, you have in seconds, in milliseconds, you have an idea about the brand, and you say good or not good. And this is your autopilot. He decides in seconds. And why? Because in the past, you stored information, codes, experience about the brand in your brain, in your limbic system. You store positive arguments and sometimes also negative experience. And that creates in your subconscious the idea about the brand. And that's for branding and for brand communication, it's very important because you have to know which informations are in the deep of your brain. But there's one question. Is this positive code for everyone the same code? Because is our brain, is it everywhere the same? No, it's like our eyes, it's like our hair. It's different from person to person. So we have to understand how our brain is working and which kind of emotional system is in our brain and how important is it and which one is more important for us, which emotions are more important for us. In our reward system, we call it emotional reward system, we have 4 parts. One part, we call it autonomy, one part excitement, one part certainty, and one part is relationship, people, and we try to simplify what is in your brain and to show it in 4 types. We created these 4 types, and you find these 4 types in a lot of other models also. We call this sync types, and we have 4 sync types. The first one is autonomy. This is when people ask themselves, this message, this code I get from the brand, will it make me stronger, more successful than others? And then there are other people, they have another reward system which is more important. Maybe will this brand get a good feeling to me? Will it help me? Will it help my team? Or I have information so I can discover new opportunities, new things. For some people, it's very important. For other people who look for safety, for reliable, it's not so important. And we have to understand how people are ticking. And because this decides how people are deciding. Deciding to buy a product, to buy a car, everything, every decision is influenced by our emotions. And it depends from our reward system. And these are the questions of the different types. For example, the yellow one asked, is it innovative? Is it different? Is it unique, this message, the people, this adventure? And other people asked, is the new product I want to buy, is it tested? Is it proven? Different argumentations for a brand. I would like to explain this a little bit. And for that, we created one thing, and we said, okay, this is a personal profile of a normal customer. This customer, for this customer's reward system is very important to be secure and to be social. Maybe she wants to buy a car. So she said, okay, I want to create a family, I need a family car. And then I'm looking ads in a journal or somewhere. And the ads are yellow. They tell me a yellow story. And then I go to the internet, and there I hear something about efficiency and all the other arguments. But it doesn't fit to my personal reward system. So what we have to do in communication is to synchronize this, to bring it together. And I want to show you 2 examples later how the business industry and the consumer market are doing it. Yes. But for the B2B market, we created a tool to measure all these emotions. So we have created questionnaires, and after 10, 15 minutes, I know your personal profile, and I know also the personal profile of a brand. And I can say this brand has these codes, and this codes fits to this target group. This is very important in brand communication, and we have to understand this directly because the big brands are using this method to find their brand positioning. You see this here with cars. Every car fits to one target group. BMW to the people who are open. If you see, the claim in German is Freude am Fahren, excitement. They had a campaign called Adrenaline. Mercedes, the best or nothing, quality, reliable. This is their message since a couple of years. And if you see how they are doing communication, they are doing exactly a synchronization between the brand and the target group. And I'll show you 2 spots. Mercedes claim the best or nothing. The story is security.
Sorry. Sorry.
See, a very creative sport was the basic message of the sport is reliability. You are secure in our Mercedes. That's the home base of the brand. And if you are doing brand communication, you must, in the first step, create your home base, and then in the next step, you can create your communication. And this communication you have to create on spots and television, but also in the internet. Another brand. Other sport, other reward system. It's creative, it's fun, it's new, being something more special. And people, the brand is like this, and the people are like this. To the reward system of my father, he said it's nonsense. You should never buy a Mini. So what we have to understand is we have to address to the reward system the right message. And how we can do this in the internet is a very complex system. And we want to explain this now, how we are doing this online. To find the right message, that we address the right emotional codes to the emotion system and the reward system of our clients, of our target groups, to get, in the next step, the right decision to buy our products, to get our message. So we have to synchronize brand on one part, the target group, and the media, and in this case, the online platform. How we are doing this, we'll explain now Ivo in the next 10 minutes.
I'll just use this mic.
You use this one? Okay.
Well, thank you, Jürgen. This is very exciting. And thank you. It is very exciting, and this was also the reason 1 year ago for me to join on a mission and basically bring brand sync to the digital world. And what does this mean in detail? Imagine everything starts from the content which we create. So when we create the content, we address people, right? We need to know who are we addressing, and then we need to know how do we address them. And when we use words, it would be great if we know how do these words affect people. And there are people who are more talented, they don't need a tool for that, they have this intuition, but it's not always working. So we've created a tool, basically, which analyzes the content and can point out the different emotional triggers. You see, in this content, we have many yellow parts, for example. So we foster innovation, excitement. And once we have created this content, we can go ahead and position it in our campaigns, as for example on the website. Once the users start to interact with our website, we can basically measure how their brain works. Basically, what triggers, which emotions trigger to an action. And then we measure these actions and can form a profile. With this profile, once defined, we can create more content which we address specifically to the user and his emotional profile. For example, our user was interacting and reading most of the yellow content. He was looking for something new, something innovative. And therefore, we sent him a campaign which is specifically targeted to his emotional profile. But this doesn't work just only in email campaigns. Once this user comes back to the website, we can address him directly on his emotional profile and provide him with the information which he seeks and which triggers an action or to buy a product. When the user calls the hotline, for example, we identify him as a person that seeks excitement. We can connect him automatically to someone who fits to his profile and will talk his language. We can also send him leaflets or whatever we can think of targeting specifically this emotional profile. So basically this allows us to optimize our communication. And one of our current targets is to go a step further. Basically, every time a user calls or comes into a shop, every time we have an interaction with a user, we'd like to measure how does this person think. So when he calls the hotline, every person speaks different. He speaks different words, different way of speaking. And when we analyze all the factors which we can capture, we can eventually create this emotional profile and synchronize it back into his unified profile. So that's exactly what we were talking in the first part. We have a platform which allows us to gather all the data, behavior, profile, situation of a user. So we know what he's looking at, when, how much. This allows us to basically create his emotional profile. And when we synchronize all the information of a user with an emotional profile, we can give the company, your company, a face, which eventually allows us a a one-to-one communication. And this is where many industries are striving, like Facebook and Google. So that is something we jumped on and working on. I thank you very much for your attention. We still have a few minutes for questions, so I'd ask Rouven and Jürgen to come out. So, who would like to ask a question? Very shy today, this morning? Yes?
So it's pretty sophisticated what you guys are talking about, and it's clearly a growth area. How do you, as a service provider, avoid, or how do you deal with people who don't want to be profiled? So it's,
with people who don't want?
If the consumer understands that they're being profiled, it actually may have an adverse reaction. And how do you decide how to calibrate how specific to make that communication so that you're able to access that automatic response without triggering their suspicions of Big Brother?
Okay, so the question was, how do you deal with users who actually don't want to be profiled? And any take on this?
Sure. I can answer this. People are looking for special kind of information. If you are looking in the B2B sector, there are people who are driven to bring the company in the next 10 years. And so maybe they are looking for products which are innovative. And we give them the right, if we know this and we see it, they're clicking always on yellow because there are headlines about new products, new possibilities. It's a service for him. And we don't talk to him and say, you are yellow, so you get this message. No, he decided this message is important for him, and we offer these messages. That's the way we are working. And so that's the way, it's a basic for efficient communication. Because he comes back on our platform because he gets the right information for his reward system. That's the story.
So to add on it, many traditional marketing platforms, they show you content based on behavior. That's what we said, the digital fingerprint. And that's what makes many people annoyed, because basically it is not targeted to my emotional profile. It's targeted to behavior. And therefore, when the message is exactly what I'm expecting, it's not creating this feeling of I'm being tracked. Actually, it's creating the feeling I'm being understood.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because I think some of the things that I've noticed, and you probably noticed too, with some of the recommendation engines that exist now, is they're not very sophisticated. They'll recommend something to me that I just bought.
Yeah.
Or,
Exactly.
look at it, like, oh, give me a break.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point.
And to this extent, yeah, it's not about creating the holistic user profile and know everything about his user. It's about being able to react to the context and to his behavior. So this whole solution approach would allow you to address anonymous users. And when they don't want to be tracked, the technology respects that. There are no tracking cookies and so on. So it's definitely not about learning everything, just making use of the things we can learn from his behavior.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Over there.
My question is how we can use some of these marketing personalization methods in smaller businesses that are interested in it, but aren't yet ready for the tapping into it just yet with a huge budget. What are the smaller steps that they can be doing now to align themselves with a marketing personalization strategy?
That is a very good question. So the question was, what can smaller businesses do in order to achieve marketing personalization?
Yeah. So I like this question because what would be the first step on that way? And first of all, as a brand, as a content editor, I have to be aware of that there are different users. So even without knowing them, I need to think about how I structure my content. And in terms of structure, it's important to follow some standards. Like you need to have good keywords. You need to make your content structured in a way that you could track it and learn from the tracking analytics tools how you could optimize it. Then you could start with small steps like starting with A/B testing, and you don't need the big bang platform for that. Yeah? But sooner or later you will reach a level where you recognize that a single solution limited to a CMS or anything like that won't be sufficient anymore. And this is where you can make the step and start thinking about a centralized user profile, no matter if it's anonymous or known.
There are many tools put together eventually achieve a close result. The main thing is to understand your user and who is your customer and end client, and to address them basically properly. Another question here?
Yes, I have a question specifically for Rouven about architecture. So you separate the user information, the content, and the specific applications. But the problem then is when you have new applications coming up or new requirements, all of this content and user-specific information also has to migrate with the new requirements. So doesn't that introduce a challenge to manage this changing information across different platforms?
Yeah. So to repeat the question, if I get this correctly, the question is, once I have been able to address the users on my platform with the content, and I brought this together, how do I bring this content and experience to other channels, like other devices and technologies, right? So for that case, it's really important to store those information abstract and independent from the CMS. This is why we have this approach with software as a service layer, which is not Drupal agnostic. Now, so this is standardized metadata, basically, which you could reuse over APIs. You could make your own creations. And the content, how we store it, it's like just take the abstract, like the purest form of the content, without the theme surrounding. Yeah? And then let the endpoint decide how we should render this piece of content, how images should be rendered, and so on. I hope this answers the question. Okay.
There was one question over here. So basically, yeah, to repeat the question, when I go to one area and I click on a yellow content, basically, what happens? Do I automatically get tracked as a yellow person, and then basically I get all the yellow content? In fact, it's about interaction. So if you don't read the content, then you're not engaging with the content. So it's about interacting with content, and just one interaction doesn't make you a purely yellow profile, exactly. Because we saw the profile that no person is only in one sector. It's always a combination, but some are stronger. So basically, it takes more interaction to have a more accurate profile. So once we have a more accurate profile, we can start to show more, or let's say, exclusively of this content. We store every interaction. So we store the interaction that you clicked on the yellow content, but for example, didn't interact with it. So you didn't read it. So then you open the blue content and spend several minutes there. So basically this gives us the hint that you're more interested in the blue content, and that you might be interested in the yellow content, but we're not sure about. So we'll give you more points to the blue content and eventually build up your profile.
That's actually a pretty good point, because when a new user comes to our website, we usually don't know much about them. But there are informations we could already use, like the context. What is his device? What is his location? Those are informations which are available. We can extract from the way how the web works. We could also check the referrer. Is he coming from Google or is he coming from Facebook? So is there maybe a campaign we could utilize to make a first decision to understand what the user intent is when he arrives on our website? And then we can start collecting his behavior and react on that, no matter if he is known or unknown.
Any last question? Okay, no, go ahead.
So, listening to you guys, it made me think that what you're doing might actually be useful in a way that you haven't realized yet. My organization and many like it have designers that work inside the organization of the company and are trying to create value, for their constituents and their customers. And lots of times we'll work from things like personas, which are typically heuristic and include some sort of bias, so they're somewhat problematic. But the gold standard these days is behavioral personas that are driven from analytics and actual behaviors. So I was wondering if you had thought of packaging up what you are learning for designers so that they can create better personas and products that they create. So
Well,
it's a different sort of delivery mechanism than what you're
right, right. I mean, our focus is now on content creation a lot, because that's where, that's where the user interacts. But it's a very good point to think also about design, and maybe
Possible at the moment, because we are thinking about the content. Because you saw the spots. The same is about creativity. You can say, okay, creativity fits to the yellow profile we created, and not to the green profile, because the green profile is traditional. But if you see the spot is creative. But the message, the content of the spot is different. So the first step is always do good creation, good user experience, but it must be there then the right content. And there are some photos, some pictures which fit it more to the yellow guy and other photos more to the others. But we can't use only this kind of photos.
I understand the premise. I think what I'm saying is that by doing your business as you are currently doing, you can create a byproduct that could be useful to different people in the organization.
Yeah, next time. But this is the first challenge we have to do, and then the next one.
yeah, I think in the current case it comes a lot to experience, basically, of our designers who work together with content creators to create the design and the image which we want to transport. So it would be really amazing if we could have a ready-made instruction how a designer should create design to address specifically.
Right. I'm not thinking UX, I'm thinking more service design and experience design. We can talk more about that.
Right, okay, good.